Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, the podcast about how to live life with love, passion, and purpose. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to heal your emotional past, identify real compatibility, and find long-lasting love through the merging of ancient science, modern technology, and quantum physics. Tired of superficial connections? Start your free Soulmate Connection membership today at loveinyourhands.com. Now here's your host, Cynthia Clark, palm reading consultant, compatibility expert, and heart harmonizer. Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Cynthia Clark, and I am always excited to share messages of how we can bring more love, passion, and purpose into our lives. And today's topic is pretty serious topic in that we're going to look at it from the perspective of how behaviors can be destructive, particularly substance abuse is one of those that is very close to me personally, because I've lived through it in different capacities with people in my life. But I also know that on the other side of that is love and joy and purpose and all of those things that we want to bring into our lives. So I want to start out with a little palm reading lesson, because addiction actually does show up in your hands. And it's something that I don't always talk about, obviously, but it's something that you should check for. And so if you take a look at your palm, and there is a section of your hand, we call this the Venus mount, okay? Now, the Venus mount represents several different things. On the one hand, it is your heart chakra, okay? So you can think of that as your giving energy, your loving nature. It also represents the pleasure zone of your hand, okay? Now, everybody has a little bit of puffiness in this part of your hand. But what we don't want to see is an imbalance. When we have imbalances in the hand, that can show up in the form of some sort of destruction in our lives. Okay, now the good news is our hands can and do change over time. So, even if you have this as a problem right now, it doesn't mean you have to have it forever. Okay, so the hand is simply reflecting back to you what is going on with you. It's a mirror to who you are. So when this section, this Venus mount, is overly puffy, meaning that it's like, it looks kind of big relative to the rest of the hand, that is a sign that you could be overindulging. In other words, having addictive behavior tendencies. So take a look at your own Venus mount and see where it's at relative to the hand. So if it looks like that, just like out of proportion big, chances are you probably have some addiction tendencies, or you could just be addiction prone as well, and you got to look out for that. So that is today's palm reading lesson, and I'm very excited now to bring in our very special guest. We have Robert Ciampi, who is amazing, and I'm excited to talk to him again. We've had him on the show before. He is a clinician, a therapist, a counselor, supervisor, consultant, and he is the author of this really awesome book called When to Call a Therapist. And I'm telling you, he is the real deal. So I'm really excited to have him on again. So thank you for coming on the show, Robert.
Cynthia, thank you for having me on your show again.
So yeah, this is awesome. So for those who haven't heard our other episode, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and how did you even get into this?
Okay, well, back in my 20s and 30s, I experienced a lot of anxiety and depression, trying to find a direction in my life. And a friend of mine who had been in therapy suggested that maybe I call a therapist. And, I realize now that it's not an easy process to find a therapist, to actually pick up the phone and call a therapist and set the appointment, and what am I going to talk about? And there's a lot of anxiety surrounding it. So in my book, in my first chapter, I talk about my story, how I got into therapy, and how it literally changed my life after seeing a therapist.
Wow, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about how people get stuck in abusive kind of behavior, self-destructive behavior. And I have a very soft spot for people who fall into that, because it seems like it can happen kind of gradually, and it's almost like it sneaks up on you. Um, what would you just share your wisdom about that?
Well, you're correct. Substance abuse, alcohol abuse, it's very insidious. It does kind of sneak up on you. People use drugs and alcohol for various reasons, for many reasons. But you know, and folks don't know what's going on right off the bat. It's later on when they either want to stop using or they decide that they've had enough, and they try to stop, that they realize that, hey, wait a minute, my body's craving this drug. My psyche is craving this drug. And so it's just like you said, it's very sneaky, it's very insidious, and before you know it, you could be in a bad place.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I could tell a story about that, which I didn't know if I was going to bring this on the show, but I guess I will. Uh, when I was 20, I think I was 21. I was really young. I was, of course, getting and I grew up in a Mormon family, by the way, so I didn't grow up drinking at all. So I think part of me wanted to kind of rebel a little bit. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try some alcohol. I ended up getting really drunk off of tequila. So drunk, in fact, that I ended up passing out. And I was in public, like I was actually in a casino. That's where I was. And I was gambling.
Gambling and drinking. Okay, they go
Yeah,
together.
gambling and drinking. And I think I was winning. But anyway, I ended up being so sick that I passed out and I woke up in someone else's hotel room. And that scared me so bad that I woke up. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know. Luckily, my friend was with me. And so he was kind of looking out for me, but I ended up like throwing up like 6 times. Luckily, I made it to the toilet. But it was one of those wake up calls for me. Like, wow, holy cow, like this is incredibly dangerous. And not only can it kill you, but it can get you into places where you really don't want to go and you don't want to be.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that was a big eye opener of like, I never, ever, ever want to get this drunk again.
Well, yeah. I mean, you probably don't drink tequila anymore, I'm sure.
Actually, I can't even smell tequila now. It makes me
Exactly.
sick. Yeah.
But, alcohol and alcohol advertising is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Everywhere you turn, it's on TV, it's on the radio, all over stadiums and sports arenas. There are wine stores, liquor stores, everywhere we turn, and it's just in our face all the time. Magazine advertisements and others. And so it's something that's out there. It's something that we all know. One time it was illegal in our country to purchase alcohol. That didn't go over too well, and so the laws were changed. So we have a legal drug out there that is, as you said, more dangerous than people realize. I mean, a lot of people say, well, alcohol's legal, and what's the harm of having a glass of wine or a beer or something like that? There probably isn't in the right settings, but some people can't just stop at one beer or one glass of wine, and it becomes a chronic habit, which can turn into an addiction.
Right. Yeah. And so when somebody recognizes that they have an addiction, when should they come and see you? I mean, this is the whole point of your book, I think. Like when when do people actually need to go and get professional help?
Well, unfortunately, people don't get help until, they hit that rock bottom, and which is different for all people, for everyone. And it's not until their lives start to really unravel. There could be problems in the work environment. Maybe someone's showing up late for work. Maybe they're calling out sick a lot. Uh, Certainly in a marital situation, one spouse may be you know trying as hard as they can to get the other spouse into treatment, and there's a lot of marital tension there, family tension, and it unfortunately gets to that point where in some cases it's a matter of life or death. And you know I don't know. I mean, a lot of people like to be in denial, and they would say, oh, I only drink on the weekends, or I do some drugs on the weekends, no big deal, doesn't affect my life. But as we mentioned before, the insidiousness of it, next thing I'm addicted. And how did that happen? So it's unfortunately, people don't get into therapy usually sooner rather than later. With addictions, it's people tend to kind of get to a very low point before they either realize, or a family member or a friend realizes, hey, you better get some help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when is it appropriate to do an intervention? Like let's say you have a friend and you watch them slowly destroying themselves, and you notice that they're doing that. When is it appropriate to do that?
Well, I would say at any point, even before a person hits that rock bottom. Uh, the addict's brain, though, and with denial and other defense mechanisms, uh, oftentimes prevents someone from getting into treatment, you know, uh, at the very beginning of their problems, because they don't want to believe that there's a problem. They want to believe that everything's under control, when it's not. And oftentimes, when we're in that situation, it's very hard for us to see our own stuff, our own problems. It takes an objective person on the outside to say, hey, we're noticing this, we're noticing that. Maybe you should go talk to someone or get some help. And again, denial can kick in and say, no, I have this all under control. Don't worry, it's fine, when in fact it may not be.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some solutions to just get people out of that destructive space? Like, is there anything that we can do as friends or as our relationship partner? It just seems almost so futile. It's tough. It's a tough position to be in.
It's a tough position to be in, as the person who's addicted. It's a tough position to be in as the person who cares about that person, whether it's a family member, spouse, or a friend. We're currently in a public health crisis in our country. Uh, Opiate abuse is rampant. Uh, I just read an article the other day where the death rate from opiate overdose is actually still on the rise. Uh, Tens of thousands of people are dying each year from overdosing on illegal drugs. So we're trying everything as healthcare professionals. I know on a county level they have programs. There are municipal programs to try to educate the public. And certainly as clinicians, we try to guide people into treatment if we're seeing them individually. And there is help out there. That's the good news. But the not so good news is, trying to get someone into a treatment facility.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Many people, unfortunately, tend to overdose and end up in a hospital if they're lucky, and they can be revived. There's a medication out there called Narcan, and if that's administered, if you get to the overdose person in time, you can administer this medicine, and it can actually reverse the effects of the opiate. It kind of scrubs the receptor sites clean of the drug, and the person reverses, meaning they were headed for uh, death, but because the drug now is cleaned out of the system, they can be revived, or as I call, reversed. Uh,
Mm.
that's the good news. Now, oftentimes, well, a person who's reversed like that, they go into immediate withdrawal, which means that they start to have the sweats, the shakes, cold sweats, nausea, and that's not a good place for that person to be. Hospitals, emergency departments usually have people who will come in and try to talk to the person who just overdosed into getting into treatment right away. But unfortunately, the addicted person wants to be discharged, wants to go back out on the street and use again, because that's their only way of trying to alleviate the stress and the physical symptoms that they're experiencing. Uh, I just want to say one more thing, that addiction is very complicated. It involves a lot of different uh, parts to it, and so there just isn't one solution. We need a multitude of interventions to help the person, try to get into recovery.
Absolutely. And it's true that they really can't do it on their own. I mean, I feel like people who are in that space, you're right, they're in denial. They think they can handle it. They don't think it's that big of a problem. They really don't see, or maybe they do, but not at the level that it really is a problem. So it's so essential that they get help. um, do you feel that it's appropriate for like, let's say it's a spouse, do you feel it's appropriate for a spouse to actually sign up his or her partner to get the help that they need? You know, what do you recommend there?
As adults, we all can make decisions on our own. Uh, a spouse cannot sign up her husband for treatment. He has to want the treatment. He has to consent for treatment. He has to be willing to go through the program. And it would be great if we could just sign people into the hospital who have psychotic disorders and addictions. But, when you think about it, we can't do that. Just,
Hmm.
the
Right.
person has to be willing to go in and get treatment. The only way that a person can guide another person into treatment is if they're a danger to themselves or others, and that would be, a person, you know, uh, not agreeing for the treatment, but because they meet this criteria, they can be brought in involuntarily into the hospital.
Mm.
But they have to meet that criteria that they're a danger to themselves or someone else or property.
Mm.
But that's the problem, because how many mothers see their sons or daughters who are addicted, and they feel helpless, they can't do anything about it. So the person really has to want to go. uh, Education goes a long way. uh, I mean, there's kind love, there's tough love. I don't know, there's no one right or wrong way to go, because
Hmm.
I know of both. In both cases, folks have either gone in or not gone in. If there's tough love, they might run from that situation. But in some cases, tough love has worked. Uh, Sometimes that's what it takes for a person to get help for themselves.
Right. And it almost seems like people sometimes need to hit that sort of rock bottom place, and until they realize that they need to make a change. So, you know,
Absolutely. When a person uses drugs, uh, the drugs become their uh, friends, becomes their job, becomes their relationship, might become their, their school, their education. It becomes their whole life, and all those things uh, may go away in their lives, but they see the drug as their friend, their job. And in fact, in many cases, it is a job to get up in the morning and look for drugs. That's, it's a job, but it's not the kind of job that's going to benefit them. They'll find friends who are also addicts to be their circle of friends. And when everyone's doing the same thing, it's kind of normalized.
Right. Oh,
We're all doing
totally.
drugs, we're all getting high, we're all stealing, we're all doing this, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like this is what we do. But
Mm-hmm.
it's in that inner circle that you have that kind of thinking, not in the outside world.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I always tell people, find friends who you look up to. Those are the kind
Surround
of,
yourself with positive people.
yeah, absolutely.
That would be my advice.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your opinion on marijuana? I mean, this is such a controversy across the country, and it seems like it's becoming more and more accepted. And I just moved from Colorado, where of course it was legal, and there were so many people doing it. I wasn't one of them, but what's your opinion on marijuana?
I guess I have pluses and minuses. On the plus side, if you buy from a dispensary, you're pretty much guaranteed that what you're buying is what you think you're buying. In other words, it's not adulterated with other chemicals and stuff. Because out on the street, you never really know what you're getting. I mean, the guy in the corner does not have a degree in pharmacy or anything like that. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like they do with opioids, where they put fentanyl in it to boost the effects of the drug. Sometimes with marijuana or synthetic marijuana, there will have other chemicals put in there, and that can have some really serious side effects. Um, and then on the that's on the plus side, that you're kind of getting what you think you're getting. Um, and then on the negative side, marijuana will still impair you. It's not. I mean, it's a drug. It's a psychoactive drug. And how many people will be driving around stoned and just not really knowing their surroundings and things like that. So it is a drug that will impair you. People should not be driving under the influence of anything, even
Mhm.
even pharmaceutical medications. Sometimes they'll say do not operate machinery or drive a car because they may impair you a little bit.
Yeah, for
So yeah, I mean, I know it's a big topic in our country right now.
sure.
If it's legal, that might diminish some of the illegal people from selling it.
Mhm.
But we can go back and forth on this all day long. I
Right.
still think it's a drug. I still think it will impair you, and I still think those who use it in legal states or anywhere need to understand that this isn't just drinking a can of beer. It's a drug that's going to be with you for a number of hours.
Right. And it's just good to think about all the stuff that you put in your body, period, I think. Whether it's a prescribed drug, which, maybe is helping you in the short term or whatever. But, it's just good to know, like, okay, how is this drug affecting me? And how is it affecting my relationships with other people? How is it affecting my work? And chances are, if you're not careful about it, you need to get some help with it and make sure that you're actually living the life that you want to live. Ultimately it's about, are you happy? Are you productive? Are you loving? And if you're not, There's probably something you need to heal.
I agree with that. I think that people who abuse drugs and alcohol are trained to mask an underlying problem that's already there. But I also think that many people who abuse drugs and alcohol think, oh, well, yeah, I heard of this person overdosing, and I read in the paper that this famous musician overdosed, but that won't happen to me, you know. And people
Right.
tend to say that, but even the people who have died may have said that it won't happen to me. So it's a very, very dangerous thing to get involved with. And in my book, When to Call a Therapist, I start out by saying, the best way to not get addicted and not get caught up in this web of addiction is to not start at all. And, that might sound simplistic, but, there needs to be education that this is not something to play around with, that you can see the statistics of tens of thousands of people. I think the last time I looked, it was somewhere around 50,000 people a year, and that's as many lives that were lost in the Vietnam War over all those years. And so it's education, uh, stigma-free municipalities, colleges, universities, go in and get help. It's okay. It's okay. We need each other. And so we shouldn't feel that we need to do this on our own. So
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah, I'm very big
I love
into
that message.
yeah, I'm very passionate about trying to reduce stigma regarding mental health issues, but also around substance abuse issues too.
Yeah,
Come on,
absolutely.
let's get some help before you get too deep into it.
Yes, absolutely. So anybody out there who's listening, if you feel like you might have a problem with this, um, Robert and I are encouraging you to go get help because, your life actually does matter. And, every life matters. And it's important that you get the help you need. I mean, that's what we're here for. So don't feel like you're all alone. You're not. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So thanks for those great messages. This is just so important. So tell us a little bit about how people can find your book. How can they work with you? All of that good stuff.
Okay. Well, my book, When to Call a Therapist, is available online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Uh, it's just about anywhere online. And I have a private practice in northern New Jersey. So if anyone is in the area would like to sit down and talk about maybe some issues that they're going through, you can find my contact information on my book website, which is www.whentocalatherapist.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for coming on the show. Really appreciate you and all the wonderful work you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This
And
was great.
everybody, remember that you can live life with a love, passion, and purpose, and get out there and do it. And thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, the podcast about how to live life with love. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to go to find long-lasting love using the most innovative and accurate algorithm based in scientific palmistry. Tired of superficial connections? Start your free soulmate connection membership today at loveinyourhands.com. Now here's your host, Cynthia Clark, palm reading consultant and compatibility expert.